I would complete all the worksheets, post them back to Melbourne. They would grade them. They would post back the graded worksheets, and
Okay.
I was learning like this for 3 years.
Those grades were online.
They were in the post, and
In
I
the
don't know why.
post, I would be scared every single day of my life. It's very impressive that you managed to pull up with all this. Can I say this on the show? Wait a minute, it's my show. With this bullshit. Welcome, everybody, to a new exciting episode of the Connected by Language podcast, the only show that finds the most dedicated language learners out there and tries to learn from the craft. I'm your host, Michele, and I'm joined by my co host.
Michelle.
So, for the people that are joining in for the first time, I think it would be a nice thing to just give a little bit of introduction about who we are, what we're all about, and what languages do we speak.
Okay, so let me start. I'm Michelle from Germany. I speak German, English, French, Spanish, and a little bit of Portuguese.
Ooh, a new one
Brazilian.
into the roster.
Yes, Brazilian Portuguese that I started learning a while ago, but now I feel kind of confident that I can talk at least some sentences.
That's fantastic to hear.
So, a new one to the list. And I work as a language education specialist at Tandem.
Ooh, and what is Tandem?
Tandem is a language exchange app where you can meet people from all over the world. You can either talk in one on one chats or in language parties, which are kind of live group sessions.
Mhm. And yes, and Tandem is a fantastic way to also make friendships and long lasting connections because you can meet people from over 300 different supported languages. Every day, there are about 4,800 different combinations happening on the app every day. So if you're looking for no matter what your skill is or what your language learning is, you can definitely find the person that fits you the most. And sometimes people come into the app or start learning languages because they fell in love with the language for a specific reason. Sometimes, you just listening to it once on a radio and you're like, oh, I want to learn Swedish because I love the pop songs. Or some people simply like have to learn languages because it's just like they have an interest in about their culture. Well, today we're going to explore one of these cases of someone that from a country that is primarily speaking English decided to kind of turn her life around and go into one of the most interesting countries when it comes to language and also one of the hardest languages in the world, especially for beginners. Maybe you want to take a little bit of a guess of what the language is?
It must be an Asian language.
Yes, you're correct. Specifically, we're going to go for Chinese, Mandarin specifically. And today on the show, this content creator has managed to kind of do the best thing that a language learner could do, just taking a language, studying it on her own, and now she works there and teaches languages in that country. Like a lot of people wish they could do this on a daily basis. So it would be very interesting to know what her story is and especially what her technique was to achieve this greatness. So, without further ado, let's introduce into the show Australian teacher and content creator Tess. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys, thanks for having me today. Really appreciate
Hello.
it.
Hello. I'm very excited to learn more about your story, and I think a lot of people will have a lot to learn from your journey and your techniques. But before we do that, maybe I think it would be nice to just, can you tell us a little bit about your personal journey and what you're all about?
Yeah, sure. So, my name is Tess, and I'm from Australia, from Melbourne, Australia. And I've been learning Chinese now for about 8 years. So, I started off learning just on my own for about 3 years. And then I got into university, studied it for about another 4 years. And then after graduating from uni, I worked for a bit, but then I always had this nagging thought of, oh, I really want to come to China to teach English. So I've been here for the last 5 months, teaching at a university here in China. So I can get the best of both worlds, practicing my Chinese, uh, you know, um, on the streets and with locals here, as well as teaching Chinese university students English. And also on the side, I do a bit of content creation as well. So on YouTube and TikTok, I post a lot of videos about learning Chinese and my life in China as well. Yeah, and if you don't mind, I might introduce myself in Chinese to give some of the Chinese audience
Ooh.
members a listen.
Okay, sure, go ahead. I will try to, in the actual video, I will have to put all the subtitles. So it's time to get my 1 year of broken Chinese ago. Let's go.
Okay. 所以大家好，我叫泰斯，然后我就是来自澳大利亚，我学中文已经大概8年了，然后就是4年是自学的，然后4年是在大学学的，然后五个月之前我搬到中国，广州，就是当一位英文老师，我就是在这边教大学生，学术英文，还有英文写作、英文口语，之类的课程。然后我兼职工作就是，博主，我就喜欢在油管还有，国外的抖音发视频。所以我真的很感谢你们今天邀请我来到这个播客，跟大家分享我学习中文的路程，还有就是我在中国生活工作的经历吧。好，谢谢。
I understood the last word. That was thank you.
And I understood Chongguo. Let's go. I know what that means.
Yeah,
China. Yes, let's go. And Hanyu, right? You also said Hanyu, like the Chinese writing system. Is that correct?
yeah, yeah.
Yes, I got. And was sure. Also, I understood that. I am. Thank you.
Perfect.
Yes, my university, my 1 year of university Chinese has done great things for me. I don't want to go too much into depth of those experiences because otherwise we'll be here for a long time.
So let's go back to you instead, Tess. What was like? How did Chinese become part of your life? Like, how did it come into your life, and what drew you towards this language in the beginning?
Yeah, I feel like it's kind of a magical thing how Chinese kind of came up in my life. So actually, I was in high school at this point in year 9, and a lot of schools in Victoria, where I'm from, they give students the opportunity to go to China for a period of time, around 6 weeks. So I was like, yeah, why not? Let's experience the culture and learn the language. So I went on a plane, went over there. It was just, about 40 or so other students and no parents. We were just, guided by some other teachers as well. So we got, the opportunity to buy food at the wet markets, try to talk with locals, and we actually started learning Chinese there as well. So we had, like, 2 classes a week, um, and that's when I started learning Chinese, and I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." In that 6 weeks, our teachers, we had to learn 100 characters, the most common 100 Chinese characters. And, I couldn't believe it after just 6 weeks of learning how everyone progressed so far. And so that kind of whole experience really left a big impact on me. And when I went back to Australia, I just thought that something was missing, something, wasn't right. And it actually took me until a year later where in year 10 we had to choose some kind of subject that we would do on a Wednesday. For example, a lot of students go to do like a nursing certificate, something like that. And I was like, what can I do? Okay, maybe I can learn Chinese. And so because I was from quite a small school, we didn't have the resources for me to learn it actually at the school. So I had to learn by like distance education. So there was a school in Melbourne and I was just learning kind of by myself. So I would do the worksheets that they give out by myself. I would only have one lesson or one 20-minute phone call a week with a teacher. So practically all the other time, I was just self-directed learning. But from then on, I was like, yeah, I really need to make this a goal of mine in life that I want to get fluent in Chinese. So, but it was thanks to that trip to Guangzhou all those years back um, that really contributed to, how big of an impact it's had on my life so far. Yeah.
And that's phenomenal to see all the fruits of that labor now that you have come into this like professional environment and being able to interact on all like the highest level, like professionally with those people from China. But you started from kind of like the scraps, started self-directed, started with very little resources. So at the early stage of your career, what surprised you the most as you started engaging with the language?
Yeah, I think Chinese, like, it's always touted as the hardest language in the world, right? We always hear that so much. And it's kind of true for native English speakers because of how different Chinese is compared to English. Like, English, it's an alphabetical language. You can see a word and you'll know how it's pronounced. But in Chinese, like, everything is flipped on its head. There's no alphabet, there's characters, but that's not really an alphabet at all. It's like a pictographic or logographic language. So each symbol kind of represents some kind of meaning. So there's these building blocks that come together to create, sentences and words. So just the whole logic, like structure of the language is completely different. So yeah, that's something that really surprised me the most. Um, but as well, like the grammar is really simple as well. And yeah, it's just completely different from English, and I just think how different this was to English, it really fascinated me and just made me wanna keep learning, yeah.
Yeah, because when I also did a little bit of that Chinese, I was like an Italian native, and everything kind of was like completely different. And it was very interesting because the grammar side to me was like extremely easy because, oh, I don't have to think about feminine and masculine. I don't have to think about plurals. I don't have to think about the time of the verbs. Everything is so easy. And then you step back for a second, you realize, wait a minute, this is going to be the hardest language to ever learn because I don't have any reference. You don't have any ways to kind of like you have to literally like our teacher was asking us, please collect characters like they're trading cards. You would have to go to your friends and like, oh, I saw this character here. What character did you find on the street? But the problem is that we're in Italy. You're not gonna find a lot of Chinese characters roaming around in the wild. Let's be honest. So,
No.
but then when I started learning Japanese, because I speak a little bit of Japanese as well, a very little bit. We don't talk about my skills in the show, but then you have the concept of kanji, which is basically the Chinese characters. It's literally just like Chinese characters that were taken to the Japanese language, and in those cases, you start to like realize how much like nuances and how many different interpretation a single character can have. And in Japanese specifically, you have like the katakana and the hiragana to kind of like break things to make sure that like, okay, this is the kanji and then comes the verb. Imagine if you don't get that. You don't get anything. Everything is its own little guy.
And it's also not only about like writing and the characters and reading, but also a lot about speaking and
Yes.
the difficulty of pronunciation. So it would be interesting to know more from you. Like what are the differences and why did pronunciation and tones especially like become such a central focus for you early on in the journey?
Yeah, so as we know, Chinese or Mandarin is a tonal language, so you have the first tone, ah, second tone, ah, third tone, ah, and fourth tone, ah. So this is quite important in Chinese because the pronunciation, how it works is there's really only a set number of different ways to pronounce characters. Uh, so what I mean by this is there's a lot of replication of the same pronunciation of a character, but maybe it's a different tone. For example, I like to give this example. For example, ma for mama for mother, and then we have ma for like a type of plant, and ma is um, for horse, and ma is to scold someone. So they kind of all sound similar, but they have a different tone. So when you're speaking, you could be saying like horse rather than mother, and you could probably offend someone if you're saying the wrong thing. So
Probably.
it's really important to get the tones right, and that's why I was so hung up upon, perfecting my pronunciation, at the start, rather than leaving it way too late when it's hard to change.
And it's so interesting because I've heard so much about the different tones and I've tried to imitate them, but it's like really hard to do that. How did you ace this? How did you train yourself with those tones? Like to listen to them, like to hear properly which one it is, and also to reproduce them.
Mhm. So the first thing, it's really important to look at like a tonal chart. There's a lot of charts on Google. You can just search, Mandarin pronunciation chart, and you can actually see how the pitch changes over the course of when you're saying it. So I would practice like those charts quite a lot when I started learning, but then it's really just the longer that you or the more that you listen to things, the easier it is to pick up that tone. I would be listening to a lot of podcasts and also producing the sounds. In terms of that, it's really important to read aloud. So if I was reading like graded readers or even just doing textbook exercises, I would read everything aloud to practice the tones in that way. Like I wouldn't just sit there and, you know, say it in my head. That's not really useful. You need to produce it and read everything aloud. So that was my main strategy.
And in the beginning, you probably did not understand yet like what the podcasts were about. Did you just listen to them to hear the tones without knowing what they were talking about, or how did it work?
Um, I think obviously you start with the tonal charts, and then once you have those tones, like the basic idea of how to pronounce them, learned, then you can begin with basic podcasts. But I kind of have a controversial thing when it comes to, listening to podcasts and watching movies, that kind of thing. I left that until quite late in my journey of learning Chinese. Not late, but after at least a year or 2, not to overwhelm myself. So, I would just listen to really basic podcasts or, um, just YouTube videos, how to learn Chinese, just very simple things. Because I feel like if you're a beginner and you're listening to, native like podcasts, you're just going to be too overwhelmed. Um, so mostly my practice with tones came from, being taught by my teacher and looking at the tonal charts and going through the exercises. Um, I feel like it doesn't take maybe I'm saying, "Oh, it's easy, it's fine." But compared to I'm comparing this to Cantonese, which I've just started learning, and that's even worse. They have
Oh
6
God.
and in some cases 9 tones, and it's
Nine?
really hard to distinguish. Yeah, I've heard there's 9. Some people say 6. I don't know why there's 9.
I'm gonna be
I think
honest.
in most cases it's 6.
When I was looking at the tone charts for Mandarin, I thought, okay, like these four tones make sense. They're distinct. There's no way there's gonna be more ways to talk, right? No, no.
Yeah,
Cantonese is back in the corner, be like, oh boy, you had no nothing yet.
exactly.
So
So now I think, "Oh, Mandarin turns, so easy, it's fine."
there's always
I think
something.
that
I was gonna just say, like, there's always something harder. That's like one of the things that we kind of figured out on this podcast. Every time someone be like, "Oh, like, I had a hard time doing this sort of task," but there's always worse. There's always worse. There's always worse. It never ends.
yeah,
But at a certain point, it becomes a little bit scary. But I think there's also kind of like the beauty of languages because you can kind of like always better yourself. There's no like a plateau. Yes, you can become professionally sound on one language. Well, you pick up another one. Who's stopping you? Nobody's stopping you, really. Nobody. So,
yeah, exactly.
yeah. But, you started putting a lot of effort into like your own study. You took a very structured like structured way of learning for what I gathered, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So when I was starting out, as I said, I was doing this during high school. So it was more like an elective. It didn't really contribute to my score, but I was just doing it out of interest. But the way that it worked was I was matched up with like a school in Melbourne, and it was like distance education. So I had to learn, like, online. I didn't have classes, it was just pre-recorded lectures or exercises, and then they would print out all of these, workbook materials, post them to me. I would, complete all the worksheets, post them back to Melbourne. They would grade them, they would post back the graded worksheets,
Oh
and
God.
I was learning like this for 3 years. So, uh it's
Those
not probably the quickest way to learn, but I felt like having this structure was really helpful for me.
those grades were online graded, or were they like in the post?
They were in the post, and
In
I
the
don't know why,
post?
like, it
Oh,
wasn't.
I did not catch that. Oh my god. In the post? Oh,
I'm not sure why.
I would be scared every single day of my life. Is that is like my the way that I learn, like just looking at the mailbox. It's like, is it coming yet? Oh god damn it! Is it coming yet? Oh god damn it! Is it coming yet? Oh god. So
Yeah.
but it's very impressive that you managed to pull up with all this. Can I say this on the show? Wait a minute, it's my show. If with this bullshit, it's impressive. It's very impressive. But one important thing that happens when you start learning on your own is that you kind of don't necessarily know what habits sort of work best and what are the ones that are kind of hindrance to your learning. So I wanted to ask you, like looking back, like now that you've reached a certain echelon of level, like what early habits do you think matter the most for your long-term progress?
Mhm. I think in any language, really the main thing that holds you back is, like, your vocabulary. Because Chinese grammar is quite simple, as we know. It usually follows just the subject, verb, object. There's no verb conjugations like ran, run, running. So all of those things you don't have to worry about, but what really holds you back is your vocabulary. So if you don't understand, one word in a sentence, it's going to be really hard to keep up with a conversation. So I really focused on in the start just accumulating more and more vocabulary. And so actually what I would do when I was still living at home with my parents, like my mom would read out the English and I would have to say the Chinese. And although she doesn't speak Chinese, I would be like, "Okay, is it like for me, like, 我, W-O and third tone, this one?" And she's like, "Yeah." So every night I would practice with her.
Oh, that's
Even though she's not a Chinese native speaker or anything, but she can, correct if I'm actually saying it right, if I have the right tone. Um, but that only works if you have mastered the tones before that. But that was like a big strategy that I was using to really cement my vocabulary. Yeah.
It's definitely one of the big advantages of kind of like doing your own structured work, because some other people that, like, for example, like when I was learning French, I was not like I was just talking to my to a teacher, like to a friend of mine that knew French, and in that way you can't really give other people the background of the language, because you don't have the exercise, you don't have a workbook, you don't have a textbook, you don't have a dictionary, you just like kind of ruminate. So it's very nice to be able to involve people that don't necessarily know the language, but they can help you in other ways. It makes the environment better for people to learn languages. Again, as I said in every goddamn episode of the show, uh, everything, like the most important part in language learning is the environment. Even if people don't know your language, but they're happy to help, it's always nice, and it makes the learning more fun and more, let's just say, rewarding in the long run.
And I find it quite impressive that you made your mom learn like Mandarin passively. So she would already correct you and like maybe mastered the tones too, at least when listening.
I don't think so. If I would ask her now, what are the tones in Mandarin, she would have no clue.
No clue.
She
Yeah,
was
because
just
I
yeah.
was gonna ask that.
So, is are there any common mistakes that beginners usually make when they learn Chinese or Mandarin that you could avoid early on?
Okay. I think a big one is that a lot of people, it's kind of popularized in the media now that, oh, learning Chinese, so many people are now learning Chinese, and it's great. But people want to take the easy route by not learning characters. And you can only get to a certain level if you choose not to learn characters. Um, and this might be different if you're, raised from a baby, your parents are, immigrated to another country and, they're raising you over there, and you might pick up the language, without having to learn the characters. But if you were, you know, a teenager or an adult like me learning Chinese, it's really important to, um, learn the characters, uh, because, with Chinese, the pronunciation system, because it is so repetitive, or multiple characters can have the same pronunciation, you're going to get easily mixed up. Like, oh, is it that word or is it this one? And you don't know if you don't learn the characters. So you really have to do that, in my opinion. Um, Another thing in terms of the pronunciation is that there's a lot of tricky things in Mandarin that people get mixed up on. For example, these sounds, zhi, chi, shi, people get them mixed up a lot, so it's quite imperative to um, get a handle on those, as well as ji, qi, xi. So these ones, I feel like it's quite important to practice them and get used to them so that people can understand you and you can understand others more easily.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does suck sometimes when like the best response to a common mistake is like, "Oh, you have to learn it. You have to learn it." It's like the same with German. Oh, what? How can I find a way to understand if something is a neutral gender or masculine or feminine? Oh, you just I don't know. You just look at the dictionary. It's like
Yeah.
okay, that thanks, teach, thanks.
Learn
But
it by heart.
yeah, unfortunately, there is something that you have to practice. You have to remember. There's like not everything is like a super mega, like oh, you can do this technique to make things 100 times faster. You still have to put in the work for something. There are ways
Yeah.
fast in some parts, but not everything. And
I would say though there oh,
no, no, go ahead, go
sorry.
ahead.
I would say though there is like a strategy to learning characters that I adopted that kind of made it a bit easier to see why that character meant that kind of thing or sounded like that. And that is to actually learn the radicals.
Mm,
So I'm not sure if you know, but Chinese, it has about 200 or so radicals that actually make up Chinese characters. So they're like the little components. For example, there's a radical for water, a radical for heart, a radical for tree. So those radicals are actually in a lot of characters that are related to that meaning. For example, two radicals for tree connect together to make forest. Like it's quite logical in that sense. So I think it's really important to learn those characters, so the radicals, and then you can understand how characters are formed a bit better.
yeah, this sort of system also is in Japanese as well. When you see a certain radical for water, you can expect that is something related to it. But if my YouTube algorithm tells me enough, there's a ton of things that aren't as like immediate or like are kind of you have to take a little bit of a poetic mindset to understand some of them. I will probably put like an example on screen because I it's just fresh on my mind, but at the moment it's like I can't really go for it. But it's like radicals help a lot for sure, but there's definitely like some times where it's like, really, is that radical there? Like for talking about chicken and use this radical or something. I don't know. I'm just messing something up, but I've heard of horror stories of radicals and characters not making much sense, or at least like it's about feel. That's the word that a lot of friends of mine says. Of course, like I'm talking from the perspective of a European that doesn't know much of the language. You of course know it a lot better than me. So this sort of changes a lot of the perspective. It could be also be extremely wrong, you know.
I mean, you do have a point. A lot of characters sometimes I'm like, "Why? Why? That doesn't really make sense." Why you just have to accept it. But for a lot of them, there is that connection with the radical in the meaning or the radical in the pronunciation. But you do have to be a little bit imaginative.
And that's wonderful. I love that. You can kind of it's an entire exercise in itself to kind of give a reason to a character.
And going back a bit to what you told us that you were studying a lot on your own, how was your like typical independent learning routine when you were like guiding yourself through that process?
Yeah, so this was when I was still in high school, I was doing more like self-directed learning through distance education for the 3 years. So this was like a course on top of my regular courses in high school. So I kind of had to fit it in amongst all my other workload and homework and assignments and things like that. So I made a plan for myself. I think I was crazy at that point. I don't know why I was I was really fascinated with Chinese that I would wake up at 6:30 a.m. in the morning
My God.
and do, like, 45 minutes of Chinese before going to school. I don't know what like, I want that energy back. Where did that go?
Wow.
Um,
That
What
energy is
I
gone.
insane. How do you even find
yeah.
how? I'm sorry to break how? Uh,
Normally, I am quite like an early bird, but even then, 6:30 is pushing it a little bit. Um, yeah, I did that kind of schedule for 3 years, and also, like, after school, I would, as I said before, like, practice with my mom, going through the word lists. I also made, like, my little flashcards on little pieces of paper,
nice.
which was kind of fun. A lot of people use, like, electronic versions of flashcards, but back then, I don't know, I just liked creating things like that. And then I would also have a phone call once a week with my teacher, who was based in Melbourne, but that was only like 20 minutes once a week, so it was hardly anything. Um, but apart from that, I would use like a lot of other language exchange apps and things to try to find more, uh, Chinese native speakers to practice with. So I would like text them every now and then, and that's also another kind of method that I used at that time.
Yeah, we're gonna talk a little bit about more of the language exchange in a little bit, but before I want to ask you a question about other tools that a lot of people use as like, so a lot of people use certain tools and they kind of swear by it. So I want to ask you, tools like, for example, dictionary, repetition, and my personal favorite, talking to yourself for 6 hours a day, pretending to be a YouTuber.
What?
How does that fit into your everyday learning or everyday learning schedule, if at all? Could also like be completely useless. Who knows?
Yeah, in terms of dictionaries, I don't use like a printout hard copy like dictionary. I think it's just too cumbersome and annoying. But since I started learning Mandarin, I've used this same dictionary like up until this point. I still use it now. It's called Plecker. I don't know if I can say that here, but
Yeah, go
it's
ahead. Go ahead.
quite yeah, it's quite useful. It's specifically for like English to Chinese dictionary. Um, so you can save words as well, and look back on them. And you can just really analyze the characters and break them apart and see why those radicals come together to make that. So I use that app for a dictionary. Um, and also in terms of like repetition, I would have, as I said before, like the flashcards. I use them more so at the beginning of learning Chinese. Now I just um, kind of depend more on running into this word in everyday life kind of thing. And if you run into it 4 or 5 times, then you pretty much remembered it. But flashcards really were only useful for me kind of in the beginning, intermediate stage, I think. And also a good one, you mentioned talking to yourself, and people can feel a little bit weird for doing this, but I don't know. I was doing that even now. I do it all the time,
Yeah, yeah.
But back then it was particularly because in Australia, there's not a lot of Chinese speakers, or at least when I was, growing up in the countryside, the majority of people around me was, white people. So I didn't have that much opportunity to actually, come across native Chinese speakers. So I would just try to talk to myself, and
Nice.
it's really good because it cements that in your brain, like, especially these, words for, like, go in, come in, go out, like, that can be quite confusing in your mind, so if you're actively saying it, when you're, like, going into a room or when you're, taking a shower or cooking, you can just say, "Okay, 做饭，我在做饭." Um, and narrate what you're doing. I find that was really helpful.
Yeah, it's also useful in not just like Mandarin, but in every language, especially like you mentioned like cooking. I think that's one of the best ways. You fake being your own chef and your own house, and you just speak the different language to explain it. I think it's a phenomenal system. I don't know about y'all. I love talking to myself, like the YouTube videos that I watch. So I will be a massive advocate for people to do that as well. Talk like a YouTuber. Now, this is my propaganda. No, I'm joking. Okay. I'm joking. I'm sorry. I got a little bit too crazy over there.
And now switching from talking to yourself to talking to other people, like what role did language exchange play in the whole journey of your learning and how did it change your confidence?
Yeah, as I said before, like I grew up in the countryside, so I didn't get that much exposure really to native Chinese speakers, but I was using a lot of apps to connect with people and making friends that way. So I feel like it was a really good opportunity to, expand my worldview through learning Mandarin. And I feel like I gained like a lot of confidence through learning Chinese because right now it's become a big part of my identity actually. And my whole life kind of revolves around speaking Chinese, living in China. So it's really opened up a lot of doors, a lot of opportunities. Uh, and, this is all thanks to, learning Mandarin and being able to utilize it to exchange, the language with other people. So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and allowing yourself to be able to speak with other people and to kind of get that exchange in allows you to not only be more confident, but to make your process a little bit more natural. And it kind of, I don't want to say clashes because it's not really the right word, but it does have offer a very different experience compared to your previous style of learning, that it was a lot more exercise based. So I wanted to ask you when at some point in your own language learning process, things starting to become more natural, I would assume. When that happened, like how did you handle it?
Oh, like when things became a bit
So
more natural for
like
me? Uh,
the learning was less about the structured system that you created with the exercises, but it became a lot more natural, a lot more spontaneous, a lot more fluid. That must be, for at least I would assume, a very different change in approach. And how did you handle that different approach after you reach a
hmm.
certain level?
I think I was I was struggling a lot with this transition from like intermediate to upper intermediate, kind of advanced level. This period took a very long time, and I still don't know exactly where I am on that scale. Um, but I don't know. It's just something that you have to keep working on and learning new words every day and keep building to finally get to that like native like proficiency. Um, but I think this was quite evident when I graduated from university. So in uni, I actually majored in Chinese. It was one of my majors. So that was also quite I followed a quite strict structure as well with going to class and doing homework assignments. So as soon as I graduated, I was like, oh, what do I do with my Chinese now? I don't have any kind of structure to fall back on to improve my Chinese. Um, so that's when I look to other resources. So there's also the HSK. I'm not sure if you've heard of
Yes.
HSK.
Yes.
Yeah,
Is
like
it
the
the
Chinese
test, right?
proficiency.
It's
Yeah.
the
So I was like, I love using textbooks. A lot of people think it's
always.
boring, but I think, oh, textbooks are so fun. So I was studying for the HSK 5 and then I passed that one. Now I'm doing the HSK 6. Um, and so at that point, finishing university, I was like, okay, I'll just focus on HSK, listening to more podcasts, going to other language exchange events, like in person events.
Mm.
Um, but it really it didn't I feel like I was missing something. I need to actually be in the environment of where it's spoken the most. And that's why or one of the reasons why I came to China in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very impressive the fact that you managed to take something like that you have worked on and just be at the top of the top echelon. Again, like I said at the beginning of the episode, a lot of people strive for the ability to work abroad in their favorite country or their favorite culture. And it's harder than a lot of people think, even if you're like at a high level, especially like with the Chinese, which is like relatively speaking, a very hard language. But before we talk about the teaching, I actually have a mini question. How many levels of the HSK are there? Like in total? Like you said that you're HSK 6, and I'm like, how many there are in total?
The original or the level 2, not level 2, but, sorry, there was, like, HSK 1 and HSK 2.0, but now they've made, HSK 3.0. But the
Oh,
HSK 2.0 had levels 1 to 6. So,
okay.
I'm studying for, like, the highest one in
Highest
the
level.
2.0, but now they've introduced the 3.0 and there's levels 7 to 9, so they've added
Wow.
another
Ooh.
3 levels. But
Oh,
I'm pretty sure these 3 levels, it's kind of you take the test all in one, and then they place you on if
okay.
you're level 7, 8, or 9. But this
So
is even native speakers would find level 7 to 9 extremely difficult, I think.
yeah,
Um,
I would be very like surprised because it's already like so many different levels already. Like how much professional and how much native can you even sound at that point? Like there has to be a capping point or something. But so yeah, that's extremely impressive, by the way, that you got to again put up with all this stuff. Because imagine if you wake up someday and you're like, oh, by the way, the A1 to B2 to C1, now we just added D. We added the D level now. And you're like, what the hell? Like, what's going on here? So it's like very,
Thought I
very
was on top of everything,
yeah.
and then they're rolling out I just got the news, they're rolling out the new 3.0 HSK. I'm like, "Ah, now where I am? I still have to try harder, I'm not even there yet."
To me,
But
that sounds
that's
insane. I don't
fun.
know if it sounds as insane to you, Michelle, than to me. To me, it sounds like insane as a concept, but I don't know. I don't know about your thoughts
Yeah.
about it.
I mean, when I compare it to the European levels that you just mentioned,
Yeah.
A, B, and C, and you think C is already native speaker level, I think the only thing I can imagine is something like mastering in poetry
Oh,
or mastering like
philosophy.
yeah,
It's
it's a
just
lot
like
like really deep language understanding and mastering and knowing more vocabulary even than the average German person, for example, if it was in German. So maybe that could be a D level, but I would actually
like
tell you like Tess that with your HSK like 6 you're already quite good.
it's like you should be proud.
Yeah,
Like
you
of
should be
course, it's
proud.
strive to continue, but like though like it's a very high level.
Yeah,
Also, I'm thinking maybe for the D is also the academic side. If you like can make research
sure.
papers, because those are can be quite difficult. It's our last episode. If you haven't watched it, we talk about academics in the world of languages.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of a plug. Sorry.
Yeah, maybe it's even that. It's quite interesting because in English proficiency tests, you have the academic part already tested in the
Mhm.
kind of normal tests.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I didn't think that that could be an addition. Maybe. Yeah,
Maybe, who knows? There's always ways to innovate in the world of languages for some reason.
absolutely.
I don't know.
Yes.
But now you actually, speaking of academics and professionalism, you became a teacher. Congratulations, by the way. This is a fantastic milestone into your own Chinese career. But I gotta ask, like, how did stepping into a teaching role influence your own relationship with the Chinese language?
Yeah, so now that I've moved to China and I'm an English teacher here, teaching at a university, I do have to use Chinese quite a lot in my day to day. The majority of my lessons I would teach like primarily in English, but there are times when I will have to translate for the students if they, don't understand something. Um, and I think, having learned a language myself, the language that's their native language, I can really understand why, they might get caught up on certain aspects of English. For example, like in English, we would say, uh, a guy who is wearing a red shirt, but in Chinese, like, the word order is completely different. It would be more so something like, um, the wearing red shirt guy,
Mhm.
right? So you'd put it actually is right at the end of the sentence. So, kind of the most important part is at the end, but in English, you'll have to, like, rearrange. Um, So I can kinda understand, okay, why they're saying it like this. Oh, that's because the Chinese word order or structure is like this. So, um, having learnt Chinese, I think it's easier to sympathize with your students, empathize with them, um, having learnt their language. So
Yeah, and it's technically the red shirt wearing guy is technically still correct in English, right? Like it's a very weird way to say it, but it's still technically correct. It's like, you could set it off as like, some people why you say this in English, but I don't know, maybe I'm overstepping a little bit.
Well, I'm sure there are several like structures.
Yeah,
In that case, maybe it would work in English, but I totally get what you mean, Tess. That when somebody makes a very different like structure of the sentence, or for example, compound nouns, like they use a compound noun that doesn't exist in your language,
of
but it exists in their language, so you immediately realize why they do that, and you can help
mm,
better.
but
Yeah,
reaching that sort of level of language that you can understand their thought process, it's
yeah,
already impressive on its own. Like
absolutely.
that's not something that comes out naturally.
And maybe that's the question for you now, Tess. Like, how or when did Chinese become a language that you could imagine living and working in and not just studying?
yeah, I think, you know, finally coming to China, I realized, my proficiency, kind of meets the expectations of using it every day, um, in my life here in China. So I would use it a lot with colleagues, even my English speaking colleagues. They teach here. A lot of the time, they would just communicate with me in Chinese because it's easier. And actually, at the university that I'm working at, I'm the only foreign English teacher. So yeah, all my colleagues are yeah, all my colleagues are Chinese. So it's kind of, non-negotiable. I have to use Chinese in the workplace. Um, so that was quite interesting when I came to this position and I was like, "Oh yeah, there's gonna be other foreigners teaching English. Oh no, it's only me." So it was a good opportunity to practice my Chinese. Yeah.
And it's also funny because a lot of people that have a similar like career that like they know a language at home for like a long time, they didn't go to the country and they realize, oh, my language is not good enough. Like that's, I mean, maybe it happens to me with a lot of people that knew French from my friends that came to Paris and like, oh, I don't know anything. My French lessons were useless. But in your case, it's like, no, it met up expectations. I was doing a great job. So that's surprising on its own. It's like, yep, everything that I studied worked, and it's so rare in the world of languages, at least in my own experience. So that has to be like one of the best feelings. It's like everything works and everything is going well. So congratulations. But so you mentioned that you are using like you're talking to your coworkers in Chinese. You're basically using Chinese in your day-to-day work life. So how did using Chinese professionally change your understanding to what it means to actually know a language?
Yeah. I think, learning a language, there's the aspect of, just knowing the sentences and what to say. But there's also like a cultural aspect that underlies any language that you learn. So in Chinese, they have quite a culture of respect for senior positions of the elderly. So in your word usage, you have to include those kind of formalities when you're speaking. So, if you don't want to bother someone or if you want to ask someone for help, but you don't want to bother them, you have to use mafan, like all of these words. There's like a formal way of saying you in Chinese, nin. So you really have to be aware of all little intricacies when you're communicating like professionally.
Mhm. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of rules in those areas, even in Japanese and other like Asian countries about being more formal because we have been going through kind of like the opposite lane with some of the previous episodes that we had about languages that do the complete opposite of this. For example, Swedish, if you talk to your boss with a formal term, they would think you're weird. Mexican Spanish is just Spanish that everybody can use. There's no like formal version of Mexican Spanish. So it's like it's such a big contrasting world. And I don't know if usually like in this is a little bit of a mini segue, I guess, or like a tangent about your differences in the way that you communicate in Australia compared to China. Is like Australian a little bit formal as a language, or is it like very loose and you had to kind of adapt that formality in your day-to-day language, or was it like normal for you? Tess?
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat this? What you're a little
Yeah.
bit it cut out a little
Oh,
bit.
sorry. So basically, I was asking as a little bit of a tangent, to understand the differences between formality and informality. I was asking that if in Australia, where you were in Australia, and you were speaking in English, did you also had to make the change to like is Australian English or like Australian communication formal or very informal compared to China or to Mandarin?
Oh, it's very informal in Australia, the everyday language. We would if you're speaking to your boss, you would say the same thing as if you were speaking to your friend kind of thing. You don't have to say Mr. their last name or whatever or their title. A lot of the time in Australia, we would just, use their first name to, call your boss or your senior. So it's quite a relaxed and informal environment in Australia. So that's something that I had to get used to a little bit as well coming to China that you really need to use those formalities when you're addressing people older than you or in a higher position than you.
Yeah, that has to be like a very uh, like difficult change, but it's interesting because now that you are in China, like and you're speaking it every day, there is, like we said in this episode many times, there's always room to go forward, room to improve. So I wanted to ask you, like, this teaching and working in Chinese reveal gaps or strengths in your language skills that you didn't really notice it before moving to China.
Mm. I think, moving to China, you have this idea of, you'll be living quite close to the school and everything will be quite convenient. But things pop up in life that are inconvenient, like you have to go to the doctor and
Oh.
things like that. So I was quite fearful, my first time going to the doctor here, if I could understand everything that they're saying. And it was quite hard because they use a lot of specialized words. So it's really important to like look up on these before your appointments, things like that. And another thing as well, like the factor of like socializing and making friends here in China. Um, and like I've already made quite a number of friends here in China, but the main difficulty that I came across was, when you're in a large group of friends, like 4 or 5, 6 people, we all go for lunch or dinner somewhere, and they're all talking at full speed. It's quite difficult to keep up with the whole conversation and also, you know, contribute to the conversation yourself. So that's something that I'll still have to work on here living in China.
And you will get a lot of opportunities to do so, and that's very exciting.
Absolutely. And it's part of the whole process, right? So you like really need to like stay consistent in language learning process, and those kind of opportunities probably help you doing that. Being able to talk to your friends and understand them better. So maybe coming close to the end of the episode, it would be super interesting for us to know also what mindset helped you stay consistent with Chinese over the long term.
Yeah, I think you just really have to ask yourself, like, why are you learning this language? What use is it going to have in your life? Like, what is your main purpose of mastering this language? And for me, I feel like there was a big factor of, in Chinese, you call yuanfen or like destiny. I'm not sure why I, stumbled across learning Chinese, but it's become like such a big part of my life and it's opened so many new doors and opportunities. Um so this is another reason of why I'm you know having this mindset of don't give up and just keep learning, because it does open your world up to all these new opportunities and meeting new people, gaining new perspectives. I in a really small town, from when I was born up until graduating high school, and I didn't have that much exposure to different ways of thinking or different cultures. So Chinese was really a way for me to access, perspectives and different worldviews. Um, so this was like a major factor of learning Chinese because I can, meet new people and gain new perspectives through this language. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very like it's such a fantastic way to be able to enrich yourself with like so many different new, skills and ways to look at the world and just meeting new people and getting to know them inside out, especially with time, especially when they're not like they didn't grow up with you. They didn't like they are new people in your life, and going from a more like philosophical aspect, maybe uh,
Yeah.
we can cut to the last question of our program here, which is what advice would you give to somebody that is starting a language that feels, you know, distant or maybe like very intimidating?
Mm. I think it's really important to actually find like a native speaker, would that be a teacher or a friend to, help you learn Chinese. I found that, having a structure, a solid structure to follow really helped with staying consistent. Because the main, the is not giving up and just keep learning every single day. So I found that having like a solid routine and a structure and like a textbook to follow really helped with that. Um, so also just, making as many friends as possible and, using the language through language exchange. I would text my friends like every day and to learn this language. So those are like some of my main tips. But really, question why you're learning this language. Like I said before, find your motivation for it. Why is it important to you? What function does it have in your life? Um, so, as someone now living and working in China, teaching Chinese university students, my whole life revolves around Chinese. I would probably go many days without actually speaking English. Um, so, I think you just have to find, your motivation and why it's important to you ultimately.
Yeah, and I think those are words that a lot of other language speakers in the world, like multiple language speakers, can relate to. When you start to dream in other languages and you start kind of forgetting your own, it's definitely a moment that can be pretty intimidating, but at the same time, it's oh so rewarding. So, but I think those little like come si dice in do you say that in English? Like, oh, wise words, wise words. I was about to say the Italian version, perle di saggezza. But with wise words, I think we can give a little bit of an end to our episode of the Connected by Language podcast. Thank you all so much for watching, and thank you, Tess, for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me.
So, if you have a project or some sort of ways that people can reach you out or can learn about your own journey, this is the best time to shout out. They will be linked in the description. So,
Yeah, sure. So you can find me Test Chinese. That's my handle on YouTube and also on TikTok as well.
TikTok, you better check out those YouTube videos. I can approve them. They're very good. So, in general, so yeah, thank you all so much for watching. And if you guys enjoyed the video, please comment what, do you know Chinese a little bit? Have you gone to a different country to work on a different language? Let us know in the comments. I would love to learn about it. But if you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, give a like, and like where where else are we gonna go on our next episode? So it's very excited to see what this next episode is going to be. In the meantime, I've been your host Michele, and I've been joined by my co-host,
Michelle.
and I guess we'll see you on the next episode, right?
See you then.
So see you then. Bye bye.